how's it going, folks? Just having a bit deep thoughts about this coronavirus and how is what aspect that is being bringing into current world. To the point that where I live in Melbourne, one of the states in Australia, which is under the state of Victoria, and how the world is getting a lot of attention. The state that I'm in. All right, I'll just put the camera on the side. I don't want to stop moving. Oh gosh, I hate this. Um, when I first made coronavirus videos in regards to Australia, and never thought in my imagination that I will ever, that our country will ever end up like this at this current stage. Currently, we're in phase 4, and the government has released the roadmap for what's going to happen if things go towards to the normal society, closer to normal, but definitely is. Definitely when I look at it and how this whole coronavirus was a huge messed up, or in other words, a huge fuck up. At the beginning, they mentioned about not wearing a mask. At the beginning, they mentioned about not banning China for traveling. At the beginning, they didn't believe that there's no human-to-human transmission, and look what it led to around the world. Now, there's a lot of discussion at the moment, and there's a lot of debates. Who's in problem? The government, but at the same time, the world has got into this whole narrative of this whole what's that word? Political, very political or social justice method for not banning China travel, or not aware how contagious this particular disease or cancer or virus was to be. And there's lots of debates going on, and at the moment, and what you're seeing, those who do not wear a mask or believe it's a hoax, or going to the Freedom March rally, labeled as, conspiracy theorists and etc., anti-vaxxer or whatever. Now, it's a lot of mixed bag going through each of these protests. It's not only just one certain group, but the general true idea of having the whole Australia open, or every country open up, everyone's just on their mindset. Now, as Australia, as my state where I'm in, Victoria, has grabbing these news articles where all news outlets saying like the way how police enforcement towards to the protesters or as well attending to a protest was full ambushed by the police, and as well to their houses. It also brings a different side of Australia. And it also brings out, now there's a lot of talks about the government being a police state or closer to Georgia Wells. What they start to realize, the politician and the rest, and they start to realize they can't play nice and play again on the human rights book in this particular event, and it created a disaster. When we have the second wave in Victoria, we had a major disaster as well with using human approach. Now there's been talks about getting this whole arm and leg tracker bracelet, and not for you to track your movement everywhere you go and check on it. And I'm just there, I'm like, I don't know what to say. You see, the Western world has failed miserably, especially with the Latin America and Northern America, and as well any of the country who bombarded so hard on the social justice. If we look at the top 20 or top 30 of the list on the coronavirus world count, many of them, you see the major trend is the Western civilization, and as well with the perhaps it has a very, very strong human rights as well. So it's either very delayed to implement procedures, policy, what it becomes today, and as well how they're prepared and things like that. Countries such as, like, I won't say country, but like cities like Hong Kong and perhaps like Singapore. No, not Singapore. It's like South Korea and China using the tracing app in a very advanced way. I think Hong Kong it should be a good model for everyone else, where China and South Korea is using a lot more of the AI technology, surveillance, and as well with the China as well. Hong Kong was the first country who introduced this leg bracelet, and if you do get out the house, you will get $20,000 or $30,000 fine. It was something horrendous, sort of event. Now, the Australia or the Western world is slowly implementing this type of law, and they start to realize they can't play the human rights book, because at the end of the day, it's all about economic of the country. The economic further deepens will create a huge disaster. And I hear stories. One of my mates who accidentally went put on to the coronavirus rooms in the hospital is being treated very inhumane way. But the government has to put it in place and make a stricter boundaries for people to be recovering or not going anywhere else and spreading this disease, which they have failed in the past. Now, with the protests, what's going on around the world, they see what's going on around the world, but perhaps they wanted to reduce the numbers and clunch in. Now, whether this is good or bad, it's all about economics, it's all about power, and as well, they're trying to find a way in the best way as well. Our society won't go back to as normal, but there's a lot of news headlines such as, pajamas lady, pregnant lady, for her to organize a freedom march and, ambushed by the police and put it under arrest. There was another videos of ex-soldier Australia being ambushed, stating that he will attend to the event, but to discourage other people. Media outlets, independent media outlets who dares to record and what's being happening in that event gets arrested. And the way how they remove individual by individual of the protest or dismantle their protest is beyond what we see, the police force surrounding everyone, and it feels like a real true criminal. Nowadays it just feels like the governments do their best as they can of taking the orders from the government, law and order for the policemen to act upon, and not having the reducement of this coronavirus. The goal is to smash down the numbers and bring back the economy back. That's the goal of every single country. And so far, we see the whole brutality, and as well with the enforcement of the police force, and as well things like that. Now, I'm not against this whole thing. The whole world is in this bubble. There's no best solution until you be authoritarian. Now, the reason why Victoria is copying it really hard, I got friends from Sydney's been telling me, like, man, you maniacs are so crazy down here. You guys are like not wearing masks or believe it's a hoax, or perhaps it's getting, you don't believe in it's true. Victoria, this Melbourne state is a very lefty state and very political state. Human rights is banging on top of the charts, and as well, people here tend to, tend to believe in with the human rights a lot stronger than in New South Wales. That is something I can clarify with you guys. But when a country is banging on it too much with the lefty agenda and the human rights agenda, people tend to not to listen, and they have the freedom. They enjoy this whole freedom. But what I'm trying to say here is not good or bad, but what we see is what is the outcome here? It causes Victoria to be a huge fuck up, a huge long haul depression, recession, which I call it the Hunger Game depression society. Businesses and those who are on a business or a mortgage, they literally have to wait and see and who has a job, who kept having their job, or perhaps what's that word? Who has their job, and the other one is the fact that who can survive for the long haul of their business. If customers going to their house or need to they buy their stocks and things like that. It's a very Hunger Game, a Hunger Game recession, Hunger Game society.